I got a chance to do a speaking engagement recently for a room full of people on the 5 reasons why I built out my own studio and why it's really helped me grow my podcast and my brand. Make sure to watch till the very end because I tie it all together and I give action tips throughout on how you can get started today. Out of the 180 minutes of speeches today and as many as 36 speakers, you're probably wondering, who's this guy? He looks so young. Why would I listen to him? Why would I give him 5 minutes of my day? My answer's pretty simple. I'm not a published author, but I've tried something you may not have tried yet, and I've actually learned a lot from it. So my goal over the next 5 minutes is to share with you the reasons why I did this and why I believe it's the best move for growing a modern business podcast. You might want to be prepared to take a couple notes because this can be a little information dense at times. But if not, feel free to find me after the presentation and I'm happy to connect and answer any questions. Today I'll be sharing with you the 5 C's of why I believe building out a podcast studio can give you an edge in business in 2023. I find that most of these overlap with and feed into each other, and I believe each is as important as the last. So the 5 C's are as follows: constant access, cost savings, control of quality, and commanding authority, and connections. But don't worry, I'm not going to leave you without the 6th C, context. The typical commercial podcast studio is only available to rent between 9 and 5 on weekdays. And as a busy entrepreneur running other businesses and with other life obligations and interests, I realized pretty quickly this just wasn't going to work for me. As an interview show, my podcast relies on weekly guests, and this wasn't going to work for most working professionals either. Since building my podcast studio, I've been able to schedule guests to come at all different times, even on weekends after work and on federal holidays. As I first looked into renting a podcast studio, I was immediately struck by the price. Based on my long-form format, my guests and I are often together for 2 to 3 hours at a time between ideating and recording the podcast. A lot of podcast studios start at $75 an hour to rent out, and if you're anything like me, you like to take the time to really build rapport and discuss things deeply with your guests. Assuming you like to really take that time to ideate, build rapport, and record, doing weekly podcasts without rushing yourself or your guest could actually cost you between $600 and $1,125 a month, and that's a lot of money. I rent my space for $530 a month after tax, saving an average of $332 a month, and I use it as often as I want. I even use it as my office too. You can build out the minimum viable product of a podcast studio for about $2,100 or less and recoup that cost through monthly savings in under 7 months. Building out my podcast studio allowed me to control my quality through the customization of my space using my creative eye, and to create superior content through video, through visually appealing means, and my choice of tech. I think most podcasters would fancy themselves at least somewhat of a creative, and I do too. My podcasts are video recorded, like I said, so for me it was really important to control how my space looked and how the guest experience felt. I was able to cover my walls in soundproofing material to keep the audio crisp during recordings. And I also got a high-grade audio recording device, mics, headsets, and cameras that all contribute to my content being better quality. The best performing podcasts these days release on audio and video and take advantage of short-form social content. By building out my studio, I've been able to capture a high-quality video that I clip for socials and put it out on everything to grow the podcast more quickly. If you're trying to move forward and succeed in business, it's important to look the part, and an undeniable benefit of building out my studio is that it's helped me command more authority and recognition in my space. By commanding more authority and recognition, you're more likely to build a strong network. Establishing yourself as a respected and trusted leader in business will gravitate others towards you and help you grow that strong network. And this feeds into the importance of making connections. Like I said, making connections is simply just more likely to bring you greater opportunities, which is great as an entrepreneur. Succeeding in entrepreneurship is about being prepared to meet opportunity and then doing so really well when it arrives. When I built out my podcast studio, people wanted to come check it out. People talked about it, and that made other people want to come check it out. So having my own space Simply put, just put me in line to directly meet more people, make more connections, and attract more opportunities. So those have been the 5 C's of why I believe building out a podcast studio can really give you an edge in business in 2023. If you learned anything, feel free to find me after, follow me, and check out Profession Session, my podcast, on all platforms to follow my journey. Thank you so much for listening.